Hi, I'm Nathan, and this is my secret tropical garden in Raleigh, North Carolina. So this is the front yard. This is the first year for this garden. Last year, we bought this house 4 years ago. The first 2 years, nothing up here but grass. Last year, I planted a ton of tropicals up here. If you go back and you watch Bree, the plant lady's video she did last year, it'll show you kind of how it looked. It was just a mess. But I put all the tropicals in the ground, all the cold hardy tropicals, to grow up some size. And then last winter, I figured out what I wanted to do with it and got to work over the winter. So I'd say about November of last year. So one of the first things I did is decided I wanted a rock garden up here at the front and some big boulders. Went to price all that out, couldn't afford it. So started calling excavation companies. All the construction here in the Triangle realized, they got to pay to get rid of these boulders because they're digging them up everywhere. Within a day, I found 2 excavation companies that were willing to bring me some boulders. Paid a little bit for their gas and their time, but essentially you got 2 giant dump truck loads of boulders for nothing. So I had the boulders delivered, had some permatill delivered for the succulent garden. Had some wood chips, some soil, some sand, some other things, and rented a skid steer for 1 day. It was a long 8-hour day, but in that day I was able to build this garden bed here, move the boulders where I wanted them, plant a big berm against the hedge there, and for the most part, place all of the cold hardy tropicals where I wanted them for this season. The whole winter it looked like a wasteland, but come spring, really started to come alive. So we'll walk and I'll sort of show you the areas that we've got here. So the first bed here, I'd say last year I actually realized that I had a little bit of a microclimate here. Being against the house, it stayed warmer. Being under the roof, it stayed drier. So I realized it'd be a great place for a succulent bed. So moved the boulders in, backfilled it with permatill, sort of a soil recipe from Tony Avent, 50% native soil, 50% permatill, and just filled in all the boulder cracks. What you see here is a lot of mangave and a couple of agave. I'm a big collector of mangaves and just love the texture and the color that they provide. The bananas are not actually intentional. They were here the previous year. I thought I had dug them up, but they obviously have come back. Had they been planted directly in this bed, they would not look well. But being underneath the bed, they look pretty interesting. Now they've obviously not grown that much because they don't get much water, but it's kind of neat seeing such a water hog with these desert plants. But most of this stuff is meant to be cold hardy. Everything in the front yard is meant to be cold hardy. I don't want to dig it all up, but when it comes to the mangaves, I'd say about 90% of them are not going to tolerate our winter, maybe 80% of them. So there's some of these, the mangaves especially, I'll be digging up. Got a nice, beautiful loquat tree, evergreen. Those are doing well for me. Actually got 3 little fruit last year. And then this, we've got the bananas. We've got some of these black pennisetums, a lot of elephant ears, a lot of colocasias. And I would say about 80 to 90% of this is cold hardy. There's some few things in there, we'll get a little closer, the acalyphas, those will get dug up. I might try to save a few of the colocasias just in case the ones that are in the ground don't survive and put them in the greenhouse. But really most of this is meant to stay. One interesting plant, if you guys want to back out, I'll show you, is this variegated corn plant. And not available on the market. It was gifted to me from someone from Ralston Arboretum here in Raleigh. But if anybody's watching this who's got some power, somebody needs to bring it to market because it is really, really a beautiful, beautiful specimen. And what I do with that is I will dig it up, throw it in the greenhouse for the winter, and replant it. It also propagates really well. When I do put it in the greenhouse, I chop off all the stems and I'll stick those in some perlite and try to get them to reproduce. But not quite sure what to do with the middle of the area here. It might be lawn one day, it might be a Mediterranean garden. Would love to do a pond, but with a 3-year-old, I don't think they'll let me. This was this mangave was planted here. You can see it's in a little bit of a raised permatil bed. It wasn't quite as shaded when I put it there, but it's done very well. That's one thing I really enjoy doing, is mixing plants that don't necessarily belong with each other, because these colocasias, they just, you know, they grow in swamps. So giving them lots of water along with the mangave, and the mangaves are very tolerant of a lot of water as well, but giving it that extra drainage allows me to put them together. This is I think a really, really beautiful plant. I wish I'd see more available on the market. Acalypha, I believe it's Jacob's coat or Joseph's coat, one of those. But really, really interesting color on there. Another favorite plant of mine is this red banana here, Musa Siam Ruby. Don't know why I don't see it at every nursery in the summer or the spring, but it really should be. One thing I'll note is a lot of this stuff comes from Plant Delights. Tony Avent and what he's doing over there is just spectacular for the plant community with their breeding agaves, helping out with some mangave and some colocasia breeding, but really making these plants available to all of us. I really appreciate you guys. This area, learned over a few years that it was shaded all day, so I put in sort of a shade guard. We'll walk this way and kind of make our way in there, but we've got some beautiful variegated ginger, another copper leaf, really, really stunning. If you're in the Raleigh area, this specific one is available at Fairview every year. And as we're transitioning into this shaded area, that's where I started to put my alocasias. This is Portora. I have planted it in full sun, but it definitely appreciates a little bit of shade, at least part of the day. So you can see just really some great growth on that. Getting this, it's in full sun right now, but morning and evening it's shaded. Really, really doing well. I hope your camera transitions into the shade here well. Yeah. But this is my, meant to be a little seating area. One of these days I'll get a patio table in here. But I don't know if you can see on the camera, but lined it up with these big boulders, sort of as a backdrop. Got a lot of potted up tropicals. Cool little spot. More potted up tropicals here. This is a really healthy Burl Max philodendron. And then this hedge here, most of this stuff is in the ground. And we'll just walk by that in the front so you can see it. But let's keep going. So we're at the front of this bed underneath the pecan tree. Really, really stunning plants in here, a lot of yellows, a lot of greens. One thing you will notice with the front yard here is there's almost no flowers. I can't think of one plant I actually have up here for its flowers. There's a few hibiscus. Of course, cannas will flower, gingers will flower, but really for me, those are grown for foliage. But I think for me personally, and I don't know if it's science, but I feel like if you do a lot of flowers, they can clash. To some extent, it might look tacky. But when it comes to foliage, and when you're talking about foliage and texture, you can just go wild with it, and somehow it just blends together. You know, I do kind of try to keep some tones together for the most part in certain areas, but you know, again, very few flowers at all on this property. And we'll walk this way and check out this beautiful bromeliads, you know, where I can fit them. Love bromeliads, which, you know, that's probably next to the mangave. That's probably next on my list to start collecting. But if you want to get a shot of this nice little bed, most of this stuff is cold hardy. Beautiful Mexican feathergrass. I can't think of the name of this one, this variegated, I think, grass right there, but that's sort of new to our market as things are warming up. I think it's able to tolerate the weather here a little bit better. But yeah, that is the front yard. All right, we're gonna walk to the backyard. So this is my potted up backyard. Pretty much everything back here is in a pot. I've got a 2,000 square foot greenhouse in the back, and every spring I move it out, every summer I put it back, every fall. So we get about 6 months of enjoyment out here, maybe a little more if the weather changes. But when we bought the property, there was a big concrete slab here. The swimming pool had been filled in with soil, and we had a little greenhouse. In the last few years, I've dug out the swimming pool, put in a koi pond, built some structures for shade, and very quickly filled it up with potted plants. You can see here some more mangave. You know, shout out to Hans Hansen over at Walter's Gardens doing the breeding for these. Definitely a plant that should be on everybody's wish list. And if you watch Bree the Plant Lady, she'll actually overwinter hers in her crawl space with a grow light. And it's pretty neat what they can tolerate, but a little more tolerant of a lot of water, and just a beautiful plant, a lot of interesting textures and colors. Yeah, and then we'll make our way over here. One neat thing I'll point out is these are out of, originally I was told they were out of D-Pack. They were the sound absorbers in the ceiling. And when I saw them on Facebook Marketplace, I brought them out here and put them on the gazebo. I did cover it with rubber, so it's probably not very pretty from the top, but from the bottom, it's beautiful. So, nice shaded area. We've got the koi fish here. Just a very lovely place to stay. So over here in this area, this gets pretty much shade all day. I definitely put a shade cloth over here for it. But a lot of really interesting plants. If you can see the size of this Australian tree fern, it was in a 1 gallon pot when I got it this spring, and it's just exploded in size. Had these for about 4 years, 2 years. These are commonly called a never plant. Probably got that at Lidl, but now it's in like a 15 gallon pot and it's just taking over. Back there, that biggest plant you see is Philodendron giganteum, and it's since fallen over a little bit, but huge leaves on that. But over here, if you can't tell, it's definitely a lot of yellows and greens. Just kind of keep that color palette. And then over here opposite, a lot of different varieties of elephant ears. You know, back to just pulling stuff out of the greenhouse in the spring and having a garden overnight. Things like this, you know, these elephant ears, I don't have to buy them in gallon pots at the nursery and wait, you know, 6 weeks for them to get big. They come out of the greenhouse April 15th after the first frost date, and they're massive. And everything is that way. it's just, it really makes it a lot more enjoyable to have a garden overnight. Now putting it away and pulling it out is not so enjoyable, but such is life. Over this little area we get a little more sun, so some colocasias that can handle the sun. Got some palms, ficus. This euphorbia is looking really well. Another Musa Siam ruby doing okay. Ficus, Dracaena, I think. Ponytail palm. Another euphorbia over here. One interesting thing I'll point out, a lot of these really large specimens, I actually get secondhand from the interior plantscape business. There's several companies around town, they'll let you come by stuff they're pulling out of office buildings that's looking a little ratty. They'll let you take it and rehab it. So I get a lot of really good mature stuff from office buildings. And another thing that's interesting is because they're stretching for light, they're often contorted or just really kind of funky shape and textures. So definitely don't turn your nose up at rehabbing office plants, because you can get some really good stuff. All right, now we're going into a succulent garden. Definitely one of the great things about having everything in containers, you can put it where the climate is best. I mean, you do that with gardening too, but at least you can play with it a lot more. So you can see here a lot of aloes, a lot of mangaves, some euphorbias, definitely a lot of mangaves. And then this was originally part of the filtration for the pond. Very quickly just got turned into a straight bog garden. So it is full of permatill, which is a really good sort of wetland material. You know, that expanded slate, great for pores, very porous, great for roots and everything. So this stuff is doing very well in here. And it's, to be honest, it's stagnant water. I top it off whenever it dries, but there's no flow or anything. This mangave, the name is drawing a blank right now, but stayed out here all winter and got a little bit of burn. I think we went down to 18 Fahrenheit last year, but looks really well. These concrete planters I do make. I think the cost is like 12 bucks compared to probably $500 at your garden center. This, you know, if we want to catch the koi fish here, this is where they get fed, this is where they congregate. And then this area is, I would say, the alleyway of dreams, or whatever you want to call it, but it's just a beautiful sort of entryway into the most densest shade tropicals that I have. So we'll make our way in there. And this is definitely my favorite part of the yard. It gets really good morning sun, direct morning sun, and then it's shaded the rest of the day. And these tropicals, they love it. Got a great big bird of paradise here, some alocasia, cordyline. Finally, my cordyline are doing well here. The tea plants struggled for the first few years with those. As you can see, this monstera here is a beast. But everything, you know, like I said, everything here is in containers, and pulling it out of the greenhouse, you have the opportunity to sort of stagger it and make it look like a garden that was planted there. You hide the pots with other pots, and eventually in the front you can either have a sort of ornamental pot, or you could have something like a Tradescantia that trails over and hides the pot. But you know, the only thing that's in sort of ornamental pots are the things that are sort of in the front. Pretty much everything's in black nursery pots. I'm gonna step out of the way. And then we'll make our way through this alleyway. And this, was not nearly as crowded when I pulled it out here in the spring, but these tropicals, they just grow so fast. Part of the reason that I quickly became so fond of them is, you know, if you want to garden fast, grow tropicals. And then I also want to point out over here all these colocasia. You can't see hardly, but they're actually all in these big 42-inch concrete planters. But one particular plant that I really, really love is this, I can't remember the scientific name, but I know it's commonly called a false bromeliad. And really all I did was took them out of the greenhouse. Maybe I put 8 of them or so in there. When I put the fresh soil in, put this colocasia in there, and then put a bunch of these in the dirt. And you can see just how much it's taken over. It's trailing over the pot. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Gets a lot of direct sun. You wouldn't think it'd be able to handle it, but it's doing beautiful. But all of these elephant ears are really loving it. They do get some direct sun in the afternoon, which is what they love. But beautiful, beautiful area over here underneath the holly tree. One other thing that we'll look at these big giant plants over here. We've got a really tall ficus, bird of paradise, and then, you know, same thing that's in this pot is behind it is a type of grass. So if I pronounce it right, it's a Runda donax. It is not peppermint, which is a commonly sold variety. It does start to turn green this time of year. But in the spring, it's beautiful, white, vibrant, and gets massive. So really, really cool addition. It is in a pot, but has definitely broken out at this point because it would not be that size in a pot. In the spring, this is a hosta bed. I think this time of the year, they start getting a little ratty looking. They start getting covered up with weeds and the elephant ears. And then we also have all the succulents up here on the deck. The deck covers the filtration for the koi pond, but I keep all of these aloes and mangaves and agaves up here. I did mention I have a 3-year-old, so usually what it looks like is I've lined up the front of this with the softer mangaves that I know he's not going to get hurt on, and it keeps him out of the water. Otherwise, he really can't get to the water with all these containers. But another great thing about the mangaves is they are more flexible. They're not as pointy. Some of them are not as pointy as your typical agave. So they're kid-friendly. It's a kid-friendly agave if you want.